Optimism is essential to the human spirit. In fact, optimism is rooted in the cognitive evolution of our species that dates back to 70,000 years ago. In *Sapiens: A Brief History of Mankind*, author Yuval Noah Harari explains that what set Homo sapiens apart in their evolution as a species was in their unique ability to construct fiction through the use of our language. Fiction enabled us to imagine things that do not yet exist. Many animals and human species could previously use language to communicate danger by simply saying, "Careful, a lion." One immediately knows what is at stake. But thanks to the cognitive revolution, Homo sapiens acquired the ability to leverage language as a means to paint an imaginative picture. The lion is the guardian spirit of our tribe. Harari writes, "An imagined reality is something that everyone believes in, and as long as this communal belief persists, the imagined reality exerts force in the world." It gives sapiens immense power because it enables millions of strangers to cooperate and work toward common goals. And what is optimism other than an empowering imagined reality of a better future that we choose to believe in and work for today? This concept of an imagined future is also echoed in Tali Sharot's The Optimism Bias, where she argues that optimism may be so essential to our survival that it is hardwired into our brain. Optimism starts with what may be the most extraordinary of human talents: mental time travel. That is, the ability to move back and forth through time and space in one's mind, to think positively about our prospects. It helps to be able to imagine ourselves in the future. Although most of us take this ability for granted, our capacity to envision a different time and place is critical for our survival. It allows us to plan ahead, to save food and resources for times of scarcity, and to endure hard work in anticipation of a future reward. It keeps us moving forward rather than to the nearest high-rise ledge. To make progress, we need to be able to imagine alternative realities, and not just any old reality, but a better one. And we need to believe that we can achieve it. Such faith helps motivate us to pursue our goals. In 1942, Austrian neurologist and psychiatrist Viktor Frankl was arrested with his entire family and sent to a Nazi concentration camp. Over the course of 3 years, Frankl was moved between 4 concentration camps where he witnessed firsthand the atrocities of the Holocaust. And yet, through his suffering, Frankl found meaning and purpose, a will to live. The thought of reuniting with his wife and family and the goal to complete his manuscript that was confiscated and destroyed in the camps were the 2 pillars upon which his optimism weighed. It was this hope that allowed him to survive. It was this belief in a more beautiful future that quenched his will to carry onward through his suffering and eventually publish his book, Man's Search for Meaning. In 1963, on the day of the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, Martin Luther King Jr. did not stand on that podium and voice a fragile vision that he thought was impossible. No, he was incredibly adamant and firm when he declared that I have a dream, because he believed it to be possible. Martin Luther King Jr. believed in an alternative reality where racial injustice ceased to exist. His optimism for a better future thrust him forward and gave meaning to his struggles. Viktor Frankl believed in an alternative reality where he would return home to his family and help people overcome tragedy through his work. His optimism for a better future propelled him onward and fortified his will to sustain the fight for his life. It's the intersection of this innate human cognitive ability to imagine realities that do not yet exist, coupled with the human capacity to creatively transform life's negative events into something positive or constructive that forms the basis of optimism. An optimist, then, is someone who consciously chooses to adopt an attitude that he or she can make the best of any given situation, no matter how tragic the situation is. At this point, you might be thinking, but how can I be optimistic when my world has been flipped over? How can I imagine a positive outcome in the future when my present is so grim and difficult? How can I be hopeful when I feel hopeless? Well, there is a way. According to positive psychologist Martin Seligman, the basis of optimism does not lie in positive phrases or images of victory, but in the way you think about causes. As he writes in his book, Learned Optimism: How to Change Your Mind and Your Life. Life inflicts the same setbacks and tragedies on the optimist as on the pessimist, but the optimist weathers them better. Why is that? The answer circles back to what psychologists refer to as your explanatory style, how you mentally explain the things that happen to you and the events of your life. And whether you tend to be more of an optimist or more of a pessimist can often be revealed by your explanatory style. Optimists explain desirable events in terms of personal, permanent causes. They believe that they played an active role in creating those outcomes, and that just because something good happened today doesn't mean that there will be less of it in the future. When it comes to undesirable events, they perceive them as external, temporary causes. I was unlucky today, but that's okay. I'll have better luck next time. Pessimists entertain the exact opposite explanatory style. They personally blame themselves for bad events and perceive it as something pervasive. Of course, the publisher rejected my proposal. I'm a terrible writer, or they didn't give me the promo. I know I'm never going to get a promotion, ever. And when something good happens, pessimists tend to attribute it to luck and see the outcome as an isolated temporary case, a fluke. So, the way to optimism is quite simple, really. Change the way you think about what you experience in life. Change the way you explain things to yourself. Dim the voice of your inner critic and practice more gratitude and self-compassion. When something good happens, remind yourself of how you played an active role in delivering that outcome, and believe that similar things can unfold and spill onto other areas of your life. I got this promotion because I was lucky becomes, I got this promotion because I worked hard this year, I'm good at what I do, and I fully deserve it. When something bad happens, consider for a moment that there were other stakes at play that were outside your control, and that one bad outcome doesn't define who you are. Search for the lessons it taught you and explore the areas in which you can now grow because of that experience. My startup failed because of me. I made terrible decisions and I'm a failure. Becomes, my startup was an incredible learning experience. I made some mistakes, I had some wins, some things didn't go my way, but now I know that I'm much more likely to succeed next time around. How you perceive and explain experiences to yourself underpins the way you understand and make sense of them. So if you want to become more optimistic, your objective isn't to imagine a bright future just yet. Your objective is to reevaluate your current situation and see it in a different light. Make it a habit to challenge your negative self-talk and replace pessimistic thoughts with more emphatic and empowering ones. Train yourself to think that way, and you will reconnect with the natural optimist that is you. As per the words of Viktor Frankl, if suffering is avoidable, the meaningful thing to do is to remove its cause, for unnecessary suffering is masochistic rather than heroic. If, on the other hand, one cannot change a situation that causes his suffering, he can still choose his attitude. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. People usually confuse optimism with positivity. Sure, they intersect, but they're not the same. Optimism is about unearthing positive meaning in negative events. It's a form of resilience. And the way to do that is to draw on positive emotions in times of stress in order to better cope with the negative emotions at hand. So, optimism is about finding peace within the positive and the negative. Optimism is a process of rising and returning. Optimism is faith. It's rooted partly in our imagination and partly in our interpretation. It arises from the imagined realities of the future that we construct in our minds, and it circulates back to the present circumstances and how we explain them to ourselves. So optimism is both a philosophy and an attitude. It's a philosophy in how we interpret the events that happen in our everyday life. It's an attitude in how we carry ourselves forward. It's simple and practical. Choose to believe in a more beautiful future and you will begin to see the possibility of it. Choose to do the work for it and you will begin to see your progress through it. Choose to focus on what you can control and to only seek solutions to arising problems, and you will begin to see just how resourceful you can really be. And choose to love more than you fear, and to be grateful and accepting for all that once was, already is, and soon will be. And you will begin to see the divine beauty in every little thing. That's what the optimistic spirit is all about. At the end of the day, I cannot tell you what your future will look like, but I can tell you that your freedom to imagine all that it could be is as boundless as the ocean is deep and blue. Because seeing is not believing, but believing is seeing. So allow your imagination to wander with wonder. Allow it to believe in the light so it can see the light. Allow it to touch it, to wrap its arms around it and dance with it, for the light is hope. And optimism is simply believing that that very light is rightfully yours to seize and embrace. The way I see it, optimism is simply choosing to believe that the future can still be beautiful, and then willfully working today to manifest that future. You begin walking the path of an optimist the moment you allow yourself to see all possibilities of what could be, even when there is no validation for them today. And as you continue walking, optimism will nourish you and sustain you. Like your breath, it will fill you with energy and cleanse you of tension, and weave along with it a sense of meaning and fortitude into the very fabric of your everyday life. But you only become an optimist when you begin to intentionally align today's actions with that hope for a better tomorrow. Because it's not only about imagining, believing, and seeing, it's also about toiling in the language of labor and doing the work that will get you there. It's not only about choosing a set of colors that make you feel warm and fuzzy inside, like gray and yellow. It's also about picking up a paintbrush and stroking the canvas that is your life with a splash of faith, love, action, and enthusiasm. It's about finding peace within the positive and the negative. It's a process of rising and returning. And that's the optimistic promise of a sunshine-filled day.